application of nanotechnology. I mentioned in the last session here, I'm just curious, we've got a whole bunch of new people. Any sports cars fanatics? NASCAR fans? Like the fast vehicles? Yeah. Well, imagine a car that weighs half as much, is 3 times stronger in terms of its metal alloys, has skid-free tires, and gets 1 million miles of use for an engine. That's nanotechnology. It's literally transforming the world. It's going to be trillions of dollars worth of industrial applications, which literally span all products. And so that's just some of the things that our friends and neighbors are up to around the world. So that brings us to a dilemma. With all this stuff going on, how do we, as 21st century marketing and business people, how do we create productive and profitable cross-cultural exchanges? In other words, how do we make business work between people who all think, act, organize, task, communicate, plan, and even value differently than us? I call those things cross-cultural collisions. So how do we actually develop a positive scenario from that? Because let me tell you a little bit about the scenario we're up against. I call it the Tower of Babel. Now, this isn't the same Tower of Babel that some of the world's holy books talk about. This is a different kind of Babel. This one comes right out of Dr. Seuss books. It's B-A-B-B-L-E. Because in the world, did you know that there's actually, I think, almost like 6,800 different languages spoken? Over 2,500 religions, depending on how we define certain tribal practices. 200 countries, and according to the CIA Fact Manual book, over 5,000 distinct different ethnic groups. And remember, they all think, act, communicate, organize, task, etc., different than each other. So what does that mean in practical terms? Well, I want to go in, and I want you to do something with me for right. Just kind of imagine this little scenario just a few years from now, and you're a hard-charging young professional North American, you're out there in the workspace, you're doing your thing, and I want you to imagine what this scenario is like in the global office. Well, first of all, being a typical hard-charging young American, you believe that you should be able to rise as fast as possible through the ranks. Makes sense, right? Because our culture is based upon, we're a meritocracy. That means we believe in advancing through our own merit, and nothing should stand in the way. Well, imagine how frustrated you are when your new boss, who's Japanese, happens to be in that position because of his age. They come from a culture of seniority. Or perhaps your new boss is an Arab, and he happens to have been appointed by his brother, even though he didn't necessarily know a whole lot about the industry. Because they tend to practice what's known as nepotism, which means keep it in the family, keep it with friends. It's pretty frustrating, huh? Or how about this? Imagine that you're a hard-charging American worker, and you're a maverick. You want to cut corners. You want to get the job done, and all of a sudden your company's been bought by a French or a German company. And guess what? Instead of having this so-called flat organizational structure where you have lots of responsibility, all of a sudden it's like this big vertical ladder, and you got like 5 or 6 or 7 levels of management above you. And I tell you what, we in North America love to go practice. Who's heard of the open door policy? Anybody heard of that? It's a term you'll hear in business. It refers to progressive companies in America. We had this idea that we can go talk to our boss's boss without having to get permission from the boss. Well, guess what? You can't do that when you're working for the German or French company. It's more like the military. Strict command, sit in the corner, answer when asked. Or, let's talk about employee empowerment. There's an old saying in this country, sometimes it's better to ask permission than forgiveness. Or excuse me, it's better to ask forgiveness than it is permission. Has anybody heard that? Yeah, there's actually some companies, and I won't name them, who unofficially have what they call the blue rules and the red rules. And the blue rules are ones that we know can be bent. And the red rules are ones that are never bent. Well, guess what? You're going to work for this Scandinavian company, and everything is done by consensus. And they're not necessarily interested in the best solution. They're interested in the workable solution that's relatively risk-free. And believe me, it's far better in that case to be asking permission rather than forgiveness for jumping ahead. Okay, imagine your work day. You're sitting in your cubicle or, unfortunately, if you're in a cubicle, or you're doing your thing and you're working on your project tasks. And what are you doing? Like most North Americans, you're finishing one project and then you're going to start on the other. Makes sense, right? We are a linear, sequential processing culture. Now, for the life of you, you can't understand why your Argentinian and Italian teammates seem to be doing a little bit of everything all at once. To you, they look really confusing and erratic and unproductive. To them, you look boring and inefficient. So you see, it all depends on what cultures are used to, because they come from a multitasking, like a simultaneous type culture. Now imagine how angry you are, because guess what? You're dealing with the Chinese and the Indians, and they want to change the contract. You can't do that, you say. We had a deal. A deal's a deal. They look at you like you're crazy. What are you talking about? Truth isn't absolute. Truth changes. Situation changed. Contract needs to be changed. You're the one being unreasonable. Something to think about. Imagine how confused you might be about why your German business partner is angry at you. All you did was walk in the room and slap him on the back and say, "Hey, Oscar." You should have addressed him as, "Hello, Herr Schmidt." Or imagine how confused you are when you just embarrassed your Japanese business partner, because all you did was walk in and make an offhand joke that you thought everybody would laugh at. But turnabout's fair play, because now you're the embarrassed one when that Brazilian business partner whom you've never met before walks into the conference room for the first time and you meet him and he picks you up and gives you a giant bear hug and kisses you on both cheeks through his beard and right in front of 20 other pinstripe suits sitting there with their mouths wide open. Let me tell you, that's embarrassing. Or how about negotiation? We Americans love to get her done. We want to, time is money. Let's get to the bottom line. Let's make a deal. Well, imagine how frustrating it is if you're dealing with Arabs or certain Latins or certain Asians. That, what's the hurry? Slow down. Let's get to know one another. And furthermore, your insistence on putting everything in writing on paper actually causes them to mistrust you. So it's a really strange world. These are examples of some of the things we run into. Well, I want to share with you some lessons learned from the global office. This is the real world speaking, because some of these lessons are mine, and others are real things that happen to real people. Sound interesting? You want to know what you might have in store? Well, first of all, I want to share a little story that's actually happened to a colleague of mine, a guy named Richard Lewis. Now, this isn't the late-night comedian that you guys sneak around and stay up and watch. This Richard Lewis happens to consult to huge companies all over the world who are doing mergers, making sure things work out okay with the corporate cultures, the people, right? Well, Lewis tells this story. He was having a management retreat. Now, he lives in England, so he was having this management retreat in Western England, in Wales, this beautiful resort. And with him, he had executives who represented companies from 3 different cultures. There was a group of Finns, a group of Italians, and a group of Japanese. Well, they were working really, really hard, and they decided one night, after dinner, the Italian contingent came up to Lewis and said, "Hey, why don't we take a little break? Let's get to know one another. Let's go do a little off-site exercise tomorrow." So Lewis says, "Okay, that's cool, but first let's make sure it's okay with everybody." Well, the Finns, they heard this, well, first of all, the Japanese said, "Yeah, it's okay. We can stay in and work. We'll go with you. We'll do whatever you want. No problem." But the Finns reacted really negatively to that advice from the Italians. Now, why? Because it was pouring rain. The weather was terrible. And the Finns were saying, "Look, the trail is going to be muddy and nasty and all that. We shouldn't do that."